Welcome to the All of Life podcast from Redemption Church Tempe, where we have conversations on faith, culture, theology, and beyond to help us live all of life, all for Jesus. Let's jump into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the All of Life podcast. My name is Warren Williams, and it's good to be back here doing this podcast again with some great folks. So I'm gonna go around the table and introduce who we have on our episode today, and we're gonna be talking about music and sound, and we're gonna get into a lot of just interesting discussions about how we are shaped just to receive music, what music does to us, what sound does to us, how it's just one of those really good gifts of creation, and for me, one that's very near to my heart. So before I do that, across from me, I have Brandon Bellerson, pastor of worship arts here at Redemption Tempe, and it's his first time on the podcast. Brandon, do you want to give us an introduction? You want to let us know anything about you before we judge you on your bad music taste?
Oh, on my bad. That is good. No, I'm stoked to be here, man. I am brand new to Redemption Tempe staff and been on staff for 2 months, but couldn't be more excited to be on staff, be at our church, just a member of our community. And I was just telling Melissa as we were talking and telling her a little bit about my story before the podcast, but it's so clear even in this past 2 months that God led us to redemption. So me and my wife Amelia are just so stoked to be here, and then I'm stoked to be with y'all today talking about music. So
all right, man, huge blessing to have Brandon and your family here at our church, man. Excited to get into this. All right, next to Brandon, to his right, we have Melissa Stone. Yeah. I think we need to start having effects on this podcast. This is a good applause. Melissa, is this your first time on the podcast?
It is.
Yes. Melissa, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do here at Redemption Tempe?
Yeah, so I'm the special needs coordinator. I worked with all the families here that are affected by disability and help make sure that we open up avenues for them to be able to attend if that's hard for them and if there's barriers that we just need to work through and figure out for them. So
absolutely.
I see a lot of myself as an accommodations coordinator, this family needs and what bridge they need built, I get after it. So
Melissa, you help us to love a lot of the people that we may overlook in a lot of cases, right? And when I say we, I specifically mean me. When I'm loud and screaming and yelling and you're saying, hey, there are people here who are more sensitive to sound, be mindful of that. And it really shows the heart of God. So we really appreciate having you on the podcast today. I'm really interested to hear your perspective as we talk about sound and music. All right. And then lastly, to my right, man, we got the man in the building. We got Mr. Jordan Unterburger, our production
lead pastor of production.
No. We'll need to edit that out. No, I'm just joking. He is the director of production and technology at Redemption, and he probably takes us from, I don't know, maybe sounding like a karaoke machine to actually sound like we know what we're doing on Sunday.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, I know you've been on the podcast before, but dude, it's good to have you back with us.
Good to be back.
Yeah. All right. Like I said, in our intro, today we're going to be talking about the good gift of music and sound and just how we, in the way that we are created, the way that God designed us, we are designed to respond to sound. Sound moves us. It does something to us. And so to get us started just in this discussion and even within the broader conversation that we've been doing, the themes of these podcasts have been worship and wonder, and that's been our theme for the summer. And one way to really worship and wonder, one thing that's helped me a ton as I worship and wonder is having a good soundtrack, right? It's having, for me, actually, I don't want to reveal that because we'll get into some of our favorite songs. But anyway, I love some good jazz music. I love some good lo-fi as I'm taking a walk on the beach or I'm reading my Bible or just kind of doing the things that bring me rest. I need a soundtrack in the background because music sets the tone. Sound sets a mood.
Yep.
And so just to get us started off today, Brandon, with you being the newest member of this, well, actually you and Melissa. Well, anyway, Brandon, can you get us started off with when we talk about sound, what was a time personally, and I'd love for us to go around the table and talk about this. What was a time that you were moved deeply, profoundly by sound?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my first thing that I wrote for this question was pick a Sunday, which is cool because even in the last 2 months, there have been some incredible, even this past weekend, there have been some incredible times where like times of worship, just congregationally, where it has been completely tangible that the manifest presence of God is in the room with us,
absolutely.
right? And so cool. But I didn't want to pick the Jesus juke cheater answer. So I wrote one of the most memorable concert experiences that I've ever had, which was the 30th anniversary of the album Joshua Tree by U2, which I love U2, but I'm not like the craziest big U2 fan, so it wasn't like this dream of mine to attend. But with how influential they've been in the realm of worship music, and even I've listened to conversations with Bono and Eugene Peterson, the lead singer of U2, Bono. Which, side note, it's really funny. Eugene Peterson doesn't even know who Bono is, so it's super funny. But them talking about the Psalms, so I know that he's a Christian, and I know that a lot of their songs are influenced by the way of Jesus, right? But there's something about being in Cardinal Stadium with like 100,000 people. And their set was so big, actually. It was so big, so elaborate, so amazing looking that they had to have 2 separate stage sets because it took like up to 2 days to even set up. So while they were performing one night, they were already had their next set with another crew setting up for the next night.
Dang.
Wow. But it was honestly one of the most like transcendent experiences I've ever had, apart from maybe a lot of different times of worship, because Bono was doing a lot of gospel preaching that night, even talking about Jesus in a context, right, where a lot of people were there to just listen to YouTube because it was good music. But they care about justice and they care about a lot of these really biblical principles. And it was so crazy to see that married with just a group of 100,000 people, singing Where the Streets Have No Name. And just the sound was incredible. Obviously, just the 3-piece instrument with Bono singing, like the amount of space that they're able to fill sonically. But just there's something incredible about us coming together, and we're going to talk about it later, but just all of us singing words and aligning each other's hearts, around one message, which when that message is Jesus, right? That's like the bread and butter of what music is made for. But yeah, my long-winded answer to say U2's 30th anniversary of Joshua Tree.
Is that the album they forced on our iPhones? Or is that...
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh! No knock to you.
No one consented to that, bro. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Wow. That's great, man. Great.
That's a good throwback.
Melissa, what about you? Tell us about sound. What has been an experience you've had with sound or music that has moved you deeply?
Yeah, I am not a huge music lover. I mean, I love music, but I'm not that person who has like encyclopedic knowledge of people. I like listen to something, I'm like, yes, I feel it. But I'm not like memorizing this is who sang it. So when I think of sound, and the time that I've been moved the most by sound was probably when I heard the first cry of each of my kids. So I've got 4 kids, and I think it became even more special when that moment wasn't certain. It was like, is this like, where are we going to hear their cry? And so when that cry let out, it was just this like sound signified life. So that was of course like such a moving moment to know that sound can do that and just like relax your system and like, oh my gosh, yes. Like hearing a cry.
The release of that tension, right? In the room of like the baby's cry, the sound of like celebration, right, for you guys. When you were uncertain. Man, that's beautiful.
But then there's also too, I'm also the parent that is like, now when I hear a baby cry, it's like, ugh.
I know.
So there's that balance.
You could just see our faces. You would know our response to the cries that we have to hear as parents.
So cries are amazing, and cries can be hard too.
Absolutely. That's so good. Jordan, what about you, man?
Man, so kind of like Brandon, dude, when I saw this question, I was like, man, I really don't want to like just give the Jesus Juke answer and say like, oh, what are these Sundays? But this past Sunday, dude, something special was happening in the room. And like, I think there was this tension of like, that I always feel when I'm not on the soundboard of like, oh, I would have done this or I would have done that. Right. And I didn't have that moment at the last set. And there was, we were coming out of, what was the second song that we did? Fresh Wind. We're coming out of Fresh Wind, going into What a Beautiful Name at the 11 a.m. Larissa was saying something. and all you hear is the keys, and all of a sudden the title comes on, and there was a group of people in front of me that just started clapping and yelling and started singing out. And there was a point where I could hear the congregation over you and Larissa singing, Brandon.
Come on.
And I was like starting to tear up.
Who's leading who, right?
Exactly. Like, dude, the Holy Spirit was leading.
Hey,
Yes.
come on.
So-
I think we could just end this episode right here. I mean, that's a good ending.
Dude, it was just one of those moments that, like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I've never experienced before. So
That's so cool, man. Man, I think about a time, so my parents used to drag me to all sorts of stuff. It was good stuff, but remember one time they dragged me to Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. And it's just like this historical Black church. And there was a choir singing, and I'm going to sing it, but it's not going to be good. It's not going to do justice to the choir, but I'll never forget it. The choir, they were like, I think this is a verse out of Romans. They were like, no, not one. No, not one. And it was like so beautiful. Like, I don't remember anything. It's like there's not a ton of things I remember from my childhood, but I remember sitting in that church and hearing that choir and hearing all the voices come together. And I was like, wow, this is truly a spiritual moment. Like this is, my spirit is so moved just to see the combination of these voices come together and melt together to make this beautiful sound. And so I've been trying to recreate that, but God hasn't given me those gifts. So. All right. So when it comes, so that was great, guys. So when we think about sound, right? I think there's this, we've grown up accustomed to hearing music. We've heard it on the radios in our childhood, and now it's on our phones, and we're surrounded by sound. And maybe we can go through our days sometimes not even recognizing like the gift that sound is, and maybe taking music and just the good work the musicians and artists do, and kind of taking them for granted. And so, Jordan, as a sound engineer, I think there's an element of sound with that you have, a perspective into sound that you have that most of us probably don't have. Maybe Brandon's the closest, but I definitely don't have it. I'll probably speak for Melissa, since she said she doesn't really listen to music. So, but you have a unique perspective into sound. Like, what are some of the things maybe that we don't know about sound waves, music, that like maybe like what are the ways that it's done that speaks to like, I don't know, like I kind of want to get at like your expertise in crafting the sound that's like satisfying for people to hear. Like what goes into that? What are some of the things that we wouldn't know?
Man,
like frequencies and
well, when I was looking at this question, the first thing that kind of came to my mind was, and I think this is a quote from Josh, I'll have to ask him later, but talking about how I think he once said, like he looked into some research and realizing that all matter is music because atoms vibrate and move. They give off certain frequencies or whatever. And that's all that music is frequencies that vibrate at, or sound waves that vibrate at different frequencies. Yes. Some that you can't hear, but you feel. Right. Some that you can't even, or some that you can't hear, but it's still there. Your eardrum will still pick it up.
You don't see it.
And I just think of like, when I think of the world, like our world's permeated by sound, right? And so one thing I've actually been fascinated with recently is silence. The idea that like none of us have ever experienced true silence before. And in fact, we have to create these special rooms that isolate all the sound from the outside world. And it's actually unsatisfying to be in because we're so used to the hum of electricity or all these things again, that you feel but can't hear. Like, what does it really feel like? What does it really sound like, feel like? How unsettling is it to be in total silence? And even thinking in my own life, like, I actually will introduce more sounds into my life. I'm actually really uncomfortable with silence because, I got into this bad habit before I got married of like, I would need music to fall asleep to because like having nothing on in the room was just unsettling. I don't know why that was. So.
No, dude, those are nuggets of gold right there, man. That's really good. So, Melissa, what about you? Like, what are some of the things about sound that maybe you think we overlook or maybe take for granted?
Yeah, I think similar to what Jordan was saying, that sound makes you feel something. It's like a frequency, it's a vibration. Right. And some people are way more sensitive to those vibrations than others. We all have a different internal cadence that feels those rhythms in life. And so I think that like when I think of sound, I think of some ways maybe that sound can be threatening, actually. So we, when we're looking to accommodate people, it's like, okay, is the buzz of the lights too much? Is the sound decibels, are they too high?
Hey.
But then also too, how sound can invoke something in your body because you feel it. So really, like when someone who maybe doesn't have that ability to hear sound, that they can feel the vibration of it and still engage in music because they feel it.
Absolutely.
So, and then also too, I think of how sound really can affect our memory.
Yeah.
We have favorite moments of sound, favorite songs, but it's cool to hear about. It makes me think of people who've lived with dementia or Alzheimer's. And so when they hear a familiar song, hear a sound.
Have you ever seen that video of the lady who had dementia and she hears a song, I think from her youth or something? Maybe she was a ballet dancer or something.
Yeah.
And she starts doing the move. Oh my goodness.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
So what sound can do to bring back and really ground us in moments. So realizing how important it is to engage in sound in such a way that's like we really can see how we've engaged in sound now. And then if we live long enough, Lord willing, like we'll all be in that position where we may lose some of those facilities that we have.
Right.
So have we been grounded in our days now in what we engage in sound to bring us back?
Another mic drop moment.
That's good.
Come on.
That's good.
That's so good. Brandon, I guess you and I, we are both musicians in different respects, right? I didn't reveal this at the beginning of the episode, but if you're listening to this and you actually are familiar with just the life of Tempe and my own story, I've been in music, done music for all my life, produced like 10 albums.
Warren Christian,
no big deal.
No big deal. But Brandon, I'm just curious to hear, and I'd love to chime into just your relationship to music and sound as an artist. Like, what are some of those things that we take for granted? Maybe for the non-artists in the room, like what are some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm even just to piggyback a little bit on what Melissa just said, which nothing needed to add.
No, yeah.
But I was reading about living in our baptism this morning in a book about worship, and there are certain songs for me. It's almost like when you go to a wedding, you look at the couple being married, and then you look to your left and your wife's there and you're like, remember us?
Yeah.
And for me, or with baptism, one of the purposes of baptism obviously is to set us apart.
Right.
But baptism is something that we are designed to return to in our frame of mind, to remember our baptismal identity in Jesus, right? And it's a reflection of our death to sin and raised to life with Christ. So it's a reflection of so much when it comes to our faith. And what I love about certain songs is it takes me back.
Yes.
There are certain worship songs that remind me of a time when, something about Jesus was just revealed to me, and that song, for whatever reason, that song, was reflective of that season. I mean, or there's, the wedding song that my wife and I dance to. Like every time I hear that song, I'm reminded about how much I love my wife and, a band that we kind of discovered together, and that band grew throughout our relationship. You know what I mean? So things like that. But as an artist, one of the things that I wrote down, kind of shifting gears, is one of the things that we take for granted as Christians is good art.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we give things free passes because it has the label Christian.
Oh, yeah.
And to be honest, there's a lot of Christian art out there that was made through the means of being formulaic instead of authentic.
Come on.
To sell records to,
You want to name some of those?
Yeah. Right. Which, I think wherever we're at, in the American sphere, we can kind of all get sucked into, just the grind and the capitalism mindset of just oh, we need to sell, we need to be bigger, produce, you are what you make. And what I really love is, artists who are Christians that just make good music, man. And they don't, in cheesy lyrics, that's a part of pop music, but like the beauty of like being a Christian and also being an artist is that, I think this was Martin Luther that might have said this, like a Christian shoemaker is not, the man that puts, or the man or the woman that puts Bible verses in every sole of every shoe. It's the shoemaker that makes the highest quality shoes possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a Christian artist, as a songwriter, or as a theologian, or whatever vocation that you have, you're to do that as if doing for the Lord.
Absolutely.
Colossians, like that is what we're supposed to do. So we don't get a free pass.
Right.
And I just think, the church has been kind of pushed to the margins in a lot of ways as far as our influence with art. And I think back to a time where, Michelangelo did the Sistine Chapel and Leonardo da Vinci, and all these different super influential pieces of art. Yep. Like, what if there were a bunch of Christians out there that cared about their vocation in the realm of arts and was able to have like tremendous cultural influence because of the quality of art that they would make.
So good, man. Dude, there's so much there to unpack, but just even kind of piggybacking off of you as an artist, one of the things that I think about whenever I hear a song, and a good song mostly, right? When I think of a bad song, I just want to reject it out of my memory. So I'm not grounded in it, like Melissa was talking about. But like good songs, as an artist, one of the things I think about is like all the time that goes into creating, right? And I mean, I don't think it's not, I think it's sometimes as like an artist, it's the closest that I've ever felt to like creating from nothing, like ex nihilo, but not really from nothing because the things are all there for me. But like taking the ingredients, cultivating like different sounds, different ways to use your voice to produce this beautiful thing. It's just like, it's amazing to see. I think for, even when I hear a song in like a commercial, I'm like, wow, somebody spent like hours putting that together and mixing it and trying to probably playing over the notes to get it just right. And it's just that all the things that go on behind the scene. And one of my favorite things to do when I was, kind of making music at a high clip was just be in the studio, right? Being in the studio with all sorts of people and getting all the perspectives and people hearing sounds and things that I couldn't hear and just seeing that come together. It's just like a beautiful moment. From like starting from, a computer, Jordan, you know what I'm talking about. Computer with just maybe the beat or something like that. And then, by 2 hours later, you have a whole song and it's like elements coming out and you're like, wow, man, I can't believe how this came together. It's truly like a special moment whenever you experience that, whenever I've experienced that. So,
and just think of the God who created all the different sounds of this world, right? Like the roll of a tide coming up on the beach, right? All the like waves crashing. You hear this like high end, this low end rumble that you feel like.
So even something I've gotten kind of into recently was bird watching, right?
Really?
Yeah, that was a good transition. No, I'm going somewhere here, guys. I'm going somewhere. Stay with me. And the guy, Andy Carrillo, who's one of the elders at our church, man, he's a bird watcher, and I've gone running with him, and he's just kind of gotten me interested in it, and like just hearing the different sounds that birds make, and he's like, okay, that's a starling. Okay, that's this. And it's like, wow, man, like it's so cool. Just even within embedded in creation are all these sounds. And a lot of times in music and stuff, we're just trying to like recreate those sounds that we're hearing in creation. And so great. All right, so we've kind of been talking about music, and music is an important aspect, or a lot of the ways that we receive sound. And so I would be curious to hear, let's go around the table and let's talk about like, what are your favorite pieces of music? What are some of your favorite art? Let's just do that. Favorite album or favorite song? What do you got, Jordan?
Dang, if I'm going first.
Let's go.
Come on.
My favorite album of all time that I think is the greatest album of all time
is Backstreet Boys Millennium, right?
Wait, you too?
No, I actually think it's the Kendrick Lamar "To Pimp a Butterfly."
Oh, that's a great one, man.
I think sonically that's a masterpiece.
Dude, I got a bone to pick, but no,
you don't. No, you don't. Stop it.
Come
That'll
on,
be a
dude,
different
that's
podcast.
Come on.
I got you.
Dad jokes. Come on.
No, for me, I mean, dude, I could put that on, listen to it, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, that's a great one, man.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to think of anything else that's better than that.
That's good. All right, Melissa, what do you got?
So the last time I remember like listening to a whole album was probably when I had to go out and purchase a CD.
Whoa!
I know, for real. I know. CD was these discs.
Yes.
So I am a child of the 90s. Or 90s was like the era of music that I was into. So R&B is in my soul. So
let's hear this.
Brian McKnight was like,
start back at one.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, my soul was stirred in listening to that music. But then more recently too, and I'm like so behind in music trends, but more recently, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Is it like Bon Iver?
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the band. Justin Vernon's the artist. Bon Iver is.
Yeah. So that like ethereal music, there's definitely some moments where I've had like, I can specifically remember a run in the rain where I was listening to his music, his song, Come Talk to Me. And I'm like running with my arms down, like letting the rain hit my face and hearing this music. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the bands I was talking about earlier that my wife and I kind of discovered and fell in love to their music is Colony House, which they're like a Nashville rock and roll band. And fun fact, two of the Chapman brothers of Stephen Curtis Chapman, his two sons. So if you guys know The Great Adventure, saddle up your horses. Yeah. And then I think another band. Melissa knows. And then I think another band that I've loved forever is The Killers. And their record Hot Fuss it came out in 2004, and it could have come out yesterday. And just the sound of it, and like, I love Brandon Flowers, their lead singer, and his solo stuff. So those are the ones that come to mind for me.
Man, those are good choices. I would say for me, two artists, Stevie Wonder, John Coltrane. They're two of my favorite. And John Coltrane's album, A Love Supreme. Oh my gosh. And I'm someone that I like to know the story of like how the album got there. And if you just know even some of the history around I Love Supreme, and I'll just quote because I was listening to it this morning, and I saw John Coltrane said this. He says, as time and events moved on, I entered into a phase which is contradictory to the pledge and away from the esteemed path. He's talking about just following God. But thankfully now, through the merciful hand of God, I do perceive and have been fully reinformed of his omnipotence. It is truly a love supreme. And it's just like, that is...
That's a mic drop, baby.
Yeah, and that was the foundation, and just the emotion, right? There's no words in John Coltrane's album, but just the emotion of all the notes and how the music moves, it is truly incredible. And so that is one that will, I play very often. And Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life is another one like that. That's just so much theology there. It's a just incredible artist. All right, so. Music is not something that like we just kind of popped up doing in us humanity. Like even when we look at our Bibles, right? What's the biggest book of the Bible? The Psalms, right? Right in the smack dab in the middle of our Bible is this big book of songs. And we see in the Psalms too, just all the full range of emotions expressed, from lament to celebration to longing to happiness, all the sorts of emotions that we just experience as humans. Expressed in the book of Psalms. And so, as we think about music, right? Like, how does music like move us, right? Like, what does music do? What does music do that maybe film doesn't, right? Like, what is that gift of music? How is it good for us and to us? And what does it do uniquely for us? Oh, I'm supposed to call in somebody. Any takers? Melissa.
Yeah.
Would you start us off?
Yeah. So when I think of sound moving us, I immediately think of like the role of a music therapist. So someone who's really engaging in the rhythm of life and using those rhythms to expand social communication, expand movements in your body. And like one example is I might be working with a kid who's struggling to put their shoes on, and I start singing or start just with a beat of grab your shoe, grab your shoe, grab your shoe. And then as I engage in that beat, and then it like helps motivate their body, and helps relax the body enough to be engaged in a movement. So I think that there's that really, because music and sound is rhythm and movements that are put together in a beautiful, harmonious way, right? Not noise, not just randomness. So I think when we engage in that harmony of what's happening in our bodies, in the sounds that we hear, it can create movement. It can.
And Melissa, just kind of feeding off that, one thing I was thinking about is like some of the works of like Mozart and Bach and like these big composers, right? Like people who have studied their music have looked at it and said like, oh, wow, there's like these mathematic sequences going on within their music. And there's some of those things that are like, kind of like the embedded in the music that allow us to like receive it and be like, feel the harmony of the music and receive it in a real satisfying way. I don't know if anyone knows more about that than me, but I know like music does incorporate math and all other parts of
it. Engages your left and right brain,
right?
Yeah,
which is really cool. Like I know, like on our worship team, for example, like we have engineer types, and we have super artsy types, and I don't think that there is another medium that is able to incorporate both the analytical and the artistic as well as music. I even wrote down like, you think of sports, like a lot of people like sports, and not everyone who's a fan of music is a fan of sports, but I would be hard pressed to think of any sports fans that didn't like music.
Exactly.
Like music is one of the most universal, like shared experiences and likes of people, which is significant.
I mean, even in film, right? Like film's a different medium, but like the scores, right? They are what make the movie in a lot of ways, right? Like they provide the emotion for scenes. Imagine movies, that just weren't scored well, right?
Dude,
like,
for scary movies, if I know scary parts coming up, I close my ears and not my eyes because the music and the I call it the tension and release.
Yes, the tension release. Yes,
good
that's
tip.
what does it. That's what creates that emotion, that build up, that scary moment. You feel it because of the score, the music, everything, all the sonics that are happening.
Right, it's memorable too. Like I don't know, growing up in Sunday school, what do I do when I try and memorize a verse? I make a song.
Make a song out of it.
I literally still remember from when I was like 7 years old. Matthew 5. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
Yeah.
My dad literally made that up, which is funny because he doesn't have a musical bone in his body. Like I got all that from my mom. Thank you, Jesus. But like it's crazy because even someone who's not musical is like helping, as a father to his son, helping me memorize a Bible verse and makes up some dumb song that I remember 20-something years later.
And that's not a new concept, right? You see like the people of God as they're leaving Egypt, right? What are they doing? They're singing.
Yeah.
They're singing to be reminded of the story of how God rescued them, right? To remember their story, they turn it into a song because like you said, we remember music. We remember songs. It's some of the last bits of stuff that sticks with us.
Christians have always sang. Like, it's a practice as old as our faith itself, which is significant.
And I think that's a great segue, Brandon, to even talk about like, what's the power of like congregational worship, singing on Sunday. I think you coming here in Tempe, you've really helped us to understand well like why it's important. And so I'd love for you to shed some light on that here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Christians, we just talked about this, but Christians have always sang. It has always been something that we've done. And what's significant about the Psalms is that they encompass the full range of the human experience, where there are Psalms of complete joy and satisfaction. Like Psalm 63, because your love is better than life, I will praise you with my lips. You know what I mean? And then you have Psalms like Psalm 42, where it's like, God, I have nowhere else to go.
Right.
Like as a deer pants for the water, and even for people that are marginalized or experiencing like injustice, like straight up, some of these imprecatory and angry psalms. Like some of these psalms, honestly, like feel like some of the most heretical things in the Bible, right? Because David
crush my enemies,
kill my enemies, crush my, which obviously Jesus later tells us to love our enemies, you know. But like that's the honesty of art and music is that God is okay with us unfiltered. Because guess what? Another psalm which we talked about, you know, Psalm 139, that God knows our thoughts before we think them. He knows the words before they come out of our mouth. And there's this incredible exchange that happens in congregational worship where honestly musical liturgy is just, we're teaching and preaching. It's just to a melody, you know, and we remember and we are formed by the theology that we sing because we remember it a little bit better because it's to a melody, right? And there's this incredible exchange that happens both vertically and horizontally, where vertically, we're singing to God for who he is and what he's done. We're pleading with him to pour his spirit out. You know, we're saying that he's wonderful, he's beautiful, he's powerful, all of these different things. So that's the vertical exchange. But then there's this horizontal exchange with God's people. And, you know, I'm going to use my C- C+ scientific education here. But first of all, we're all aligning with God's heart for us, and we are striving to bless God, right? Which is this weird concept, but we're bowing down to him both maybe literally and just in our heart posture, as well as God is aligning all of our hearts, which in a world that is divided, right? Like, the church is the critique to all that division, to where we're going to come together under the umbrella of Jesus's lordship.
Yes.
You know, and with scientifically too, we already talked about it engages the left and the right brain. And then there's this chemical, which is the love hormone, oxytocin, which literally like that's, you know, our love desires, some of our sexual desires, like that chemical is released when we sing together in our brains. So it's given us almost this dopamine hit of like satisfaction in who God is and us together. And one of my favorite things is our heartbeats actually align when we sing together, and they speed up and slow down. Which explains, I mean, you know, being at a U2 concert or being at church, it explains that when we sing together, like we're not only being aligned with God's heart for us, like where we're being satisfied in him, Jesus, and his kingdom, but also we're being satisfied because our hearts are literally being aligned together under God's heart. So that, what an exchange, right?
I feel like I just need to sit on that for a little bit.
I just want to sing together now.
For real. And one thing that I love about singing too, and just the Psalms, is that it highlights God's immanence, his closeness, as like Jesus is our friend. He's our teacher. He's the person who invites us in Matthew 11 to take the easy yoke, you know, but it also highlights his transcendence, and that he is the sovereign Lord of all creation, right? That God is the creator and sustainer of all things, that he is the judge, right? So all of these traits of God, whether they're the close traits, like Jesus is my friend, or like Jesus is Lord, you know, like that highlights something that, you know, maybe only teaching could highlight, but in a different way. You know,
dude, incredible. And I even think like even allegorically in the Bible, you see something like "Sing unto the Lord a new song," right? And it's like,
oh, dude,
just
Zephaniah 3:17, like that God sings over us,
right?
Dude, I even heard, I heard this crazy thing from this artist, Makoto Fujimura, who wrote a book all about art and faith that is amazing. But he painted the picture of a notion that maybe, quite possibly, that God, as the original artist and creator, that he sang creation into existence. And that as artists, right, that we never have to start from nothing. Because we're starting from a place of new creation. Like, as Christian artists, we actually, like, not only do we not have an excuse to make mediocre art, we have an advantage to make better art because we are partnering in the things to come.
Right.
Like, what?
Dude, you know? Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Man, I even think in my own faith, right? Like one of the Christian artists, like one of the things that I was like, oh, wow, this is actually cool. And I know people are like, what? I'm not talking about Toby Mac. No diss to him. You know, he's probably great. Somebody's, you know, I know people love him. My wife loves him. But for me, like Lecrae, right? Like hearing a Lecrae Rebel album, I remember when I first heard that, I was like, wow. Christians can make good music?
Right? For real, man. And honest music.
Honest music.
Dude,
transparent.
I think about like King's Kaleidoscope. Like some of their stuff
City today, man.
Bro.
Seriously,
music, man. So anyway, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that, Brandon. So Melissa, just can you just like fill us in on like shed some light on maybe what are some things about sound music that the special needs community helps us to realize, appreciate, or from your perspective that you've seen that we may overlook?
Yeah, I think that there's this really beautiful opportunity that a community who feels music so much, sometimes, not all the time, but can feel that there's an engagement with music that looks different and unhindered at times. And so I think there's just this really beautiful thing that happens when you're feeling that same thing that they're feeling, but they're feeling like showing it and displaying it without a filter. And so I think there's this really cool opportunity to co-labor with that community and realize like, yeah, we all have gifts to bring to the table. And there's all ways that we can nurture each other, and that's something that they can give to this community of like just unhindered worship. Like you feel that, like engage in that. Yeah. And that, like, what a better space to engage in that when you're in worship or when you're in the car or when you're, like feeling, letting music move you. And
Melissa, there was this moment, sorry to interrupt, but this past Sunday,
I was
Jordan
just about to say that.
There was a boy with special needs. I'm not, remind me his name.
It's her son, Hudson.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you are practicing Hudson coming up at the back set. And honestly, I looked over and saw Hudson come up. Yeah. And like, as someone who leading on stage, I lost it. I was like, I was not able to be on mic, and luckily, right, congregation was leading us at that point. Yeah. But I saw Hudson engage in the way that he engages, and then I saw a couple people go over to him,
coming up to like let him lead,
worshiping.
I was wrecked. Like your son led me in worship in that moment, and I was, oh my gosh, like, oh my God.
So I think that's a beautiful thing that that unhindered, unhitched when David talks about like dancing through the streets, like that we get to be unloosed and unhitched to engage in worship for a God who deserves it.
Exactly. So good. All right, guys, man, this has been such a great conversation. Let's do one more question and we can wrap up this conversation today. So we're exiting our worship and wonder season as a church, and I think it would be cool for us to just go around the table and maybe share like one piece of sound or one piece of music to help us. Like just because this season may be ending in our church, it continues on in our lives in just different ways maybe. But what is that one piece of music, that one sound that we should be listening to as we continue to live lives of worship and wonder? Jordan, you can start us off.
All right, come back to me.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'll go.
Oh, yeah,
Melissa, here we go. Yeah.
So one sound, I was literally thinking like, what's a sound that I can create on the podcast? But I'm not going to do that.
Come on. I sang like 3 different times already. No.
Come on. But I think like I think we're completely unaware that we have our own rhythm. And so I would encourage people to, like, as just something you do every single day that you spend most of your day doing, but you forget to listen to the sound of, is walking. So when you're walking, like, what's the rhythm of your body? Like, what are you, how are you functioning and moving through life? And I would be curious to know, like, man, are those rhythms that we have already been built with, that God has put in us, is that some of the music that we connect to more? Am I a person who's here, or are some of us walking like,
I feel attacked.
Right?
I'm convicted.
So just that, like, like how I think even there's so much noise around us.
Absolutely.
You forget to just like pause to listen to those things in life. Like, so that's a simple thing. Like listen to you walking.
So cool.
Wow. Man, I don't even want to sing that. Melissa's just taking these like basic concepts, just making them so awesome. Yeah. As our worship pastor and as someone who cares deeply just about the formation and how we see God through this medium, I just thought of a really simple challenge for everyone, that you'd find one song about God's immanence, his closeness, that Jesus is not only our Savior, but he's our friend, right? And he's our teacher that walks with us. And then one song about God's transcendence, that he's the Lord of all creation, that he is the sustainer and creator of all things. So for me, like I have a song right now that I've been really listening to and pressing into. It's like 15 minutes, so it's great for some quiet time, but it's Communion by Maverick City, which is, it's take me back to the first time that I met you, Jesus. Like you are closer than my skin. Like this is where I'm meant to be in your presence. Really a great song of intimacy, right, with Jesus. And then there's a song, So Will I, by Hillsong United, that literally, it's got a lot of words in it, and it's awesome, but it talks about that he is the God that wove all of creation together, and then the very fact that Jesus, right, on the very hill that he created, he later went to go die.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's basically a response that, wow, if the stars were made to worship, if creation sings your praise, like, so will I.
Yes.
So a song about God's immanence and a song about God's transcendence.
That's so good, man.
Man, well, the only thing I could come up with was actually just one of my own favorite personal moment of worship and wonder this season was being up in Flagstaff or Prescott or wherever we were. And the song So Will I came on. And I was playing 2 or 3 songs and I was like, all right, I got to go do stuff. And then the last song was So Will I. And I'm standing amidst the forest with all these trees and these rocks. And then that line, if the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. And I just was moved to tears. And I'm like, if you ask my wife, I'm pretty emotionally detached, unfortunately. But I was just like a wreck when that came on.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, go kind of like what Brandon was saying, like find a song, a worship song, or just a song that moves you, that talks about relationships or something. Sing that song with your partner or your friend. Go whatever that song is talking about that moves you, go do that and sing that song, participate in it.
Yeah.
So we need to get Jordan some Brian McKnight so he can get some
I love
emotions.
I'll be there.
Dude, if you want to cry, I got some songs.
I love Brian McKnight.
No, those are all great suggestions. Jordan, one of the things that you said earlier that I was thinking about was like, if I'm being honest, I have probably used sound and music and podcasts and all these sorts of things to kind of fill the space instead of maybe, appreciating the gift of like what's around me and maybe even some of the thoughts that God's stirring in my head. And so I think one of the things, especially as fall comes back around and we can actually go outside again and not melt away.
100 and
Yes.
Like on some of my runs, I think I just want to leave the headphones at home.
Yeah.
And just listen to like what God is doing in nature, right? With the birds singing, with the cars passing by, with all the different sounds that are there, in creation. I think personally, I've tried to use sound a lot of times to just think about something else rather than the things that are stirring on my heart. So that's one of the ways I would encourage you. If you're one of those people like me, maybe try leaving your headphones at home on your next walk and see maybe some of the things that God stirs on your heart.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So grateful for each one of you guys. And I'm grateful always to be able to talk about God's good gift of music. I hope that however you're engaging worship and wonder in this next season, that whether it's the soundtrack of nature or your favorite song, that God would just continue to just make his transcendence and eminence known to you. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of the All of Life podcast. To get more information on Redemption Church Tempe, you can download the Redemption Tempe app, or you can send an email to tempe@redemptionaz.com.